If you've jumped into Cyrodiil at all recently, you've definitely felt it. That moment where you unload absolutely everything on an opponent and their health bar just doesn't move. Well, welcome to the current state of PvP in Elder Scrolls Online. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why tanks seem to be running the show.
So this is the big question on everyone's mind, right? Why does it feel like you're fighting an army of unkillable juggernauts? Don't worry, it's not just you. The entire landscape of player versus player combat has shifted, big time, into what a lot of people are calling a tank meta. And we're here to unpack how we got to this point.
So to really get what's going on, we need to look at 5 key things. We're going to start with how player roles started to blend together, then look at how the game developers kind of poured fuel on that fire with their balance changes. We'll use the Dragon Knight rework as a perfect case study, see how it all led to these unkillable support builds, and then finally, we'll talk about what all this actually means for you.
All right, first up, we got to talk about a huge shift in how players even think about their roles in PvP. Now, this didn't just happen overnight. It was more of a slow burn, an evolution that was really driven by the community itself. And this quote from Doc really hits the nail on the head. Think about it. In the middle of a massive, chaotic PvP battle, a glass cannon healer who can't take a single hit is, well, a dead healer. So players adopted. The best supports started thinking more like tanks, squishing their defensive and healing duties into one super durable role.
So what does this new hybrid support actually look like in practice? Well, it's all about crazy high resistances, massive health pools, and a whole lot of heavy armor. The whole philosophy just flipped. It became super simple. Your ability to heal or buff your team doesn't mean a thing if you're dead. So, survivability became priority number 1, period.
Okay, so while players were out there changing up their playstyles, the developers at ZOS were also steering the ship with some pretty significant changes to game balance. And their design philosophy? It started to directly feed into the rise of this tank meta.
And yeah, Skinny Cheeks really nails it here. The developers started this big push towards specialization. They wanted to get rid of that gray area where one ability could give you great offense and defense. They wanted damage skills to do damage and tank skills to, tank. And here's a perfect example of what we're talking about. Look at the Sorcerer's Bound Armaments skill. It used to give you a permanent passive damage boost just for having it on your bar. But after the update, that passive power was gone. Instead, it became a temporary buff you have to actively cast. This took away that free damage and forced players to make a real choice, offense or defense.
And the result of changes like that is, well, it's a pretty simple equation. When the potential for damage across the board gets lowered, the time it takes to actually kill someone goes up. And when it takes longer to kill anyone, every single point of health and resistance becomes way, way more valuable.
Now, if you want to see this whole philosophy in action, there is no better example than the huge rework they did on the Dragon Knight class. It basically became the poster child for this entire tank meta.
Just look at this change to Burning Embers. The heal from this ability used to scale with the damage it did. Makes sense, right? Well, now it scales with your maximum health. So what does that do? It directly rewards Dragon Knights for stacking as much health as they possibly can. Your tankiness is now literally fueling your self-healing.
And here's another one, Fragmented Shield. It used to scale with your health, but now it scales with your main resource pool, whichever is higher, Magicka or Stamina. So again, you see the developers rewarding players for going all in on their core stats to boost their defense, instead of trying to be a jack of all trades.
The message from the Dragon Knight rework was just loud and clear. The game's mechanics were being tweaked to directly reward building for survivability. Stacking all that health and resistance wasn't just a passive way to stay alive anymore, it was actively making your abilities stronger.
So, let's put all the pieces together. We've got a player mindset that's all about survival, and we've got developer changes that actually reward it. So how did this combo create the nearly unkillable builds that we're seeing all over the place today?
Well, it starts with some seriously powerful defenses that are just built right into the classes. For instance, a Nightblade can pretty easily keep up major evasion, which gives them a flat 20% damage reduction from area of effect attacks. In PvP, where, let's be honest, most of the big damage and ultimates are AoEs, that is a massive amount of mitigation right out of the gate.
And from there, players just layer it on. You start with a class that's already tough, like a Nightblade or a Dragon Knight. Then you throw on defensive gear sets like Mark of the Pariah. You pump up your health or Magicka to get these enormous shields. You're basically building multiple walls of defense that your opponent has to somehow chew through.
This quote from Icy Fire Gaming really sums up the end result perfectly. With so many different layers of shields and mitigation, the damage that's coming in often gets totally wiped out before it even gets a chance to touch the player's actual health bar. It's not just about having a lot of health, it's about not taking the damage in the first place.
Okay, so now we get the why. The huge question is, what in the world do you do about it? How can you change up your own strategy to actually compete when the battlefield is full of these defensive giants?
First things first, forget about one-shotting these players. It's just a losing battle. The key is sustained pressure. You gotta use damage over time abilities to constantly wear down their resources and their shields. Focus on debuffs that cut their feeling and get your group to coordinate ultimates to just overwhelm them. And of course, there's always the other option. If you can't beat them, join them. Making sure you're durable yourself is now absolutely essential just to stay in the fight.
And all of this leaves us with one last big question to think about. With these incredibly tough builds really defining the meta, has PvP become a more tactical game of chess, one that's focused on strategy and coordination? Or have we just traded fast-paced action for slow, drawn-out battles of attrition? That really is the big question for the future of ESO's PvP. We'd love to know what you think. Thanks for joining this explainer.